Oh, hold on. I gotta take this thing off. Hold on. Oh, okay. And we are live. Hello, everyone. Hello. I hope that you all are doing well. Welcome to Daughters of Qayin, in case this is like the first show that you're tuning into. So my name is Jasmyne. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show. This is, my channel, and we do witchcraft stuff over here. So if you're into folklore, paranormal investigating, witchcraft, the spookies, check out some of the other stuff on my channel. Check out some of the previous Daughters of Qayin episodes. And I'll let my co-host introduce herself.
Hi, it's me, Australia, and I've turned into a beaver. No, hi, it's me, Australia. Hope everyone's doing good.
And we have a lovely guest.
Hey y'all, my name's Chris. I'm over at the Blood, Sweat, and Steel YouTube channel and occultist, blacksmith, and witch. How are you?
So excited to have you. And I'm so excited that we're covering this. I remember Estrady and I were talking about doing some sort of Witch's Devil episode like maybe 2 months ago, a month ago, something like that. So this has been a long time coming. And I think that you're like, I've had you on the channel before. You guys, if you don't know Blood, Sweat, and Steel, go watch our stream that we did together talking about like forgecraft. Is that how you would say that?
Yeah, forgecraft or smithcraft or occultist blacksmithing, however you prefer. They're all correct.
Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, they can check out that stream if they want like the meat and potatoes, I guess. But tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm a hobbyist blacksmith, which lends itself very naturally to the type of witchcraft that I do because Bridget dragged me into it kicking and screaming. And that lended itself. I have a history as a welder. I spent 8 years in the Coast Guard as a ship fitter and welder, and structural repair for that, and that lends itself very naturally to blacksmithing. As far as I'm concerned, welders are the modern day offspring of the blacksmith anyway. And so when I discovered paganism and what that is, I quickly ended up um, going into blacksmithing and occultist blacksmithing in particular as part of my witchcraft. I qualify occultist blacksmithing because, as far as I'm concerned, witchcraft is part of the occult. So, and witchcraft, smithcraft, and witchcraft are one and the same for me. And there's actually a massive history between blacksmiths and the occult. They're almost inseparable. If you look at the history and the folklore around blacksmiths, you're not going to separate them. And a lot of it has to do with today's subject. The the belief in the devil's blacksmith. What the devil's blacksmith is, if you Google it now, you're going to come across a crowd-funded project that was started by an Australian person, an Australian smith. I'll see if I can find. I have notes, but I'm not good at taking notes. I'm trying to find the name of the guy to give credit where credit is due. I don't want to take up too much time on the screen, though. I can't find it. But anyway, there is an Australian blacksmith who organized a recreation of the Devil's Blacksmith Project. What that is nobody to this day can figure out how the hinges on the Cathedral of Notre Dame were made until this particular Australian blacksmith figured it out. And the reason it is called the Devil's Blacksmith is because the medieval belief was that blacksmiths must be in league with the devil because of their ability to work with fire so well. And that's a recurring theme. And if you look at it from the perspective of a medieval peasant who did not have education, couldn't even read, and had no idea what science was, it kind of makes sense where they would get that from, considering how deeply ingrained they were in Christianity. So that was a long explanation. Sorry, I hope I answered the question.
No, loves it. Loves it. And I think that, like, talking about the witch's devil and, like, sort of all of the folklore that surrounds the devil, like, I just think that there's some similar sort of, like, motifs that we have going on in, like, some of these stories of, like, the man in black and everything. And I find it interesting that we have, like, these parallels throughout, like, different cultures and, like, the folklore around what we're referring to as, like, the witch's devil. So I would love to hear from both of you, like, how would we define the witch's devil? Today I filmed sort of a video talking about, like, my journey with the devil, and that's on Patreon right now, but it'll be on YouTube later. But so I kind of filmed that, and, like, I feel like the witch's devil is so, like, otherworldly and almost, like, I don't think ethereal is probably, like, the right word that I'm looking for. But I struggle sometimes really explaining the concept of the witch's devil, because, like, as far as actually practicing with the devil, it's like a newer concept to me. So when I try to explain to, like, other witches what this part of my practice looks like, I find myself kind of struggling a little bit. So I would love to hear from both of you in your own words how you would explain what working with the witch's devil looks like, and who is the witch's devil? What is the witch's devil? Let's start there.
Okay. I just yammered on a little bit. Australia, would you like to take it?
Sure. I actually have a pretty decent history of working with the witch's devil or the witch father in a number of different ways. Ironically, the name of this podcast, Daughters of Qayin, or Tubal Cain, something like that, is one of the incarnations of the witch father or the witch's devil. Cain also having attributions to blacksmithing in the forge. Yes. For me, my journey with the witch's father has always, or the witch father, or Tubal Cain, or the man in black, has been a very deeply personal one. I could go into full detail about some of the stuff that I've experienced involving the witch father, but that would be a very long explanation. So I'm not going to fill up the entire block with my story about my involvement with the witch father. I had a very profound experience involving the Witch Father several years ago, where I feel like, I've been practicing witchcraft a long time. I've said it a couple times on this podcast. I am nearing 40. I started practicing witchcraft when I was probably about 15, 16 or so, because we got in a cult shop in our town and I got to get my claws into it a little bit. But it wasn't until my mid-20s that I had this experience, I think. It might have been more like my late 20s, early 30s. But I had a very profound experience. And then after that, I had a lot of involvement with a spirit that I referred to as Daddy Darkness, which sounds really funny, but it's what I called him. And he was super spooky, but he was a spirit that was very guiding in my development as a witch. And you will find, if you are a person who studies traditional witchcraft, you will find that the Witch Father, or the Man in Black, or the Buka, or Janicot, all these other names are very prolific. The Witch Father is a very big part of traditional witchcraft. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that. Blood?
Okay, so to me, I look at the devil in the same mind frame. Like when it comes to the devil or Lucifer specifically, I see him in very much the same way that Zoe and Fernie described from the TST. Very much so, and that's very recent. I used to just, nope, I'm not touching that. That's not mine. I don't want anything to do with it, because I came from a Christian background. It wasn't a bad experience as a Christian. I was just like, I started out reading Scott Cunningham and all those authors, and I adopted the attitude that, like, oh well, we don't have anything to do with that. Well, actually, when you look into blacksmithing mythology, I kind of can't get away from it. And like Estradia very correctly pointed out, Tubal Cain was, according to Christian mythology, the first blacksmith. And it's one of the reasons why the blacksmith was looked at as kind of a suspicious character that nobody could really do anything about, because they were so important to medieval culture and society that you couldn't get rid of them. But nobody really knew how they did what they did. And because of that connection with Tubal Cain, there was this sort of like intriguing fear of the blacksmith. Like he was the only person that could get away with any type of sorcery, which in the views of the civilian population, you're taking a rock, you're turning it into metal, and then you're making things out of it that you shouldn't be able to build. That would have been looked at as a type of sorcery that the church couldn't really do anything about. If you get rid of blacksmiths, you're kind of screwed. So blacksmiths got away with some shit because of their association with Tubal Cain. So I don't specifically work with the witch's devil. I just can't get away from it because the mythology is so wrapped around blacksmithing that it's just kind of there. So I don't really do anything with it, but I think it's interrupting phone. Sorry, let me turn it off.
That's the devil being like, now hold on.
Yeah.
Now hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think, in terms of the devil, my dogs, bless them, the devil must be here. In terms of the witch's devil, how I perceive it, and I'm not necessarily like an occult scholar per se, so some of this is very much just going to be my own UPG. I'm not saying this is 100% the correct definition. I'm just saying this is my definition as I see it right now, which is subject to change. Okay, but the way that I've worked with the devil and the way that I've kind of seen the witch's devil is like when I was what I would consider more of like a practicing Wiccan, and I was trying to work with like the horned god in my practice. That never really like quite fit for me. As a queer person, that like whole kind of like binary of like triple goddess and like super lunar focused and like maiden mother crone sort of like fertility cycle. And then like this virility of like the horned god and like that whole situation that just never really like totally fit with me. And I really tried to be like a good Wiccan. Like I really tried, you know, it wouldn't mesh. And so in the video that I filmed today, I kind of talked about how like I have pictures in my BOS where like going back, I can see where I was trying to build my altars in this very Scott Cunningham Wiccan sort of way, right? Where it's like Lord and Lady, and you have like gendered tools. So like the wand and the athame and then like the chalice and the cauldron. And actually practicing like solitary Wicca in that regard, the more I practice, the more and more I realize like this is so not resonating with me, you know? And I did kind of what some of these solitary Wicca books were saying in the books because I was like, okay, I want to learn this. So like, let me do it how this is sort of structured. And the more and more I would do that, the less it felt right. And connecting with the goddess has always been something that I felt like more of like an innate draw to, but working more with the divine masculine has been more of a challenge for me. And some of that might be because I'm just super femme, but some of that also might be because of like dysphoria, dysmorphia. So I spent several years through like my early transition really like seeing like, is this a shadow work tea? Like, is this because I'm not comfortable with the masculinity that's within me? Because I very much believe that we're all kind of this mix of both, or neither, you know, and gender can be a very fluid thing. And connecting with my own gender has absolutely shaped how I perceive the craft. Like, there's some witches out there who are like, oh my gosh, like, you don't need to make the fact that you're trans the sum of being a witch, da 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 da. And I'm like, I'm not, but I'm saying, like, as a trans person, my witchcraft is like fundamentally shaped by that. So it just didn't really work. So then I kind of like fell into like Dianic Wicca, was shoved out of there, honey. I was shoved out of Dianic Wicca. They were like, nay, nay, it's a bunch of turfs over here. And I was like, well, damn. So then I was just kind of like an eclectic Dianic solitary Wiccan. But then I was like, this isn't really right either. So then I was kind of like just eclectic Wicca. And then I was like, why am I holding on to this? Like, I feel like it's just not working for me. So then I just kind of started doing my own thing, building my own tradition in my local area, you know, following my own compass guide, doing what's right for me, become a devotee of the Dark Mother. It's been us for some years now. But the witch's devil has kind of come into my life. I talk about that in a whole other video, whatever. I'm not going to talk about like my first initial thing with the devil when I didn't even realize it was the witch's devil at the time. You want to talk about UPG and T. But yeah, I find working with the witch's devil too, it's not just like, while the witch's devil can represent to me like the divine masculine, and the witch's devil can be, I'm such like an archetypal person when it comes to divinity that like I don't see the witch's devil as like just one entity. I see it more as a way to describe an energy that is personified through multiple different mediums. Like I feel like the witch's devil can be pre-Abrahamic pagan gods, like Pan, for example. I feel like the witch's devil can appear that way. I feel like the witch's devil can also appear through like the witch trials of like literally Satan, sure, like the whole like Margaret Murray kind of thing, which I know people have a lot of different opinions on. But I feel like, so then I kind of fell down like a left-hand path thing where I was like, oh my God, that's like work with Satan, cute. And that was a vibe up until like it just didn't feel fully complete. And so now to me, kind of working with the witch's devil feels like a more encompassing divine masculine, kind of like how I work with the Dark Mother, and she can appear to me as Lilith or Hecate or the Morrigan or whatever, you know, is needed. I feel like the witch's devil is like that. But I also think that there's like a queerness in a way to the witch devil. And I'm not sure if that's because of some of the, what's the right word I'm looking for? Like hermaphroditical. I don't even know if that's a real word, but like there's some of that and some of like the art and stuff with like having both sexual parts and whatnot. So I feel like there's that whole queer aspect. And then in doing rituals with the witch's devil, like two words that I would sum up as far as like invoking the witch's devil is I feel a sense of like ecstasy and pleasure. not necessarily in like a sexual way, but including in a sexual way, but also like there's some sort of primal like fear about the witch's devil too. And not fear as in like I'm afraid of the devil per se, but like there is like an intensity to the devil that I personally have not felt, even with like the Dark Mother, you know? That's my rant on that.
I will say, with the whole intensity of the devil, I get it, because my whole thing with Daddy Darkness was that this was a spirit that like palpably manifested for me, like unbidden from ritual or anything like that. This was a spirit that would come into like my space and be like, "Hey, we got to talk about some witchcraft," and was just like a sudden palpable energy, like real close to me. Like it, the devil's intense.
So okay, so I don't actually have any of those experiences with witch's devil or the witch father or what however you want to call it, because I don't work with them. Like I said, I kind of see it the same way the TST does, which is neither correct nor incorrect. It's just kind of how I see it, which is odd because I'm a hard polytheist. I don't know why I see it that way. It's just, it's very, I think it's the word devil, which is very Christianized, and that doesn't have anything to do with what I do. I neither like nor dislike Christianity. It just has nothing to do with my path. So I kind of go, okay, that's cool. It's yours though, and I set it over there. Um, yeah, you're talking about experiences that I've never had, which is cool. Everybody's got their own different thing, but I work with Bridget and the Morrigan, and more recently I've become aware of Hephaestus and Hell. I haven't worked with them; they're just kind of around, So I don't have those experiences. Um, but I wanted to have this conversation with you because the devil, as a figure, is so ingrained in blacksmithing, I can't get away from it, which is neat and actually kind of interesting. And in fact, the only like experience, it wasn't like what we say a spiritual experience. It was an interesting awareness while making something. Let's call it infernal inspiration. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to show off a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So it needs to be assembled. This part you've seen.
I'm so excited.
This is the crescent moon bit that you requested. And this will be riveted to a central piece along with these. And what this is kumai. It is copper steel laminate, pattern welded together. And it took me forever and a lot of mistakes and a lot of getting very, very angry at my own damn hammer to get that right. But it's pattern welded. So, and then they will be riveted to the central piece that is going to go, this end is temporarily tacked together. This is going to wrap around whatever stave you get. So, and it's going to kind of wrap around the stave and hang on to it inside of here. This won't necessarily be closed up all the way. This right here, we'll have these riveted on top of these bolts here, so that it will kind of do this. And you can, there's holes in these that allow you to put wood screws into the stave, so that hopefully in the end it'll look a bit like that.
I am so excited about this. So, for those of you who might not know, I recently like slid into Blood's DMs and I was like, yo, part of this Forge Smith stuff, how much is it going to cost for you to make me a stang? And Blood was like, I mean, I could try, And it looks like we're doing it. Like I'm excited. I'm excited.
We're
There's
trying
copper in
some
there
experiments
too.
here. This is what's called a wheat twist.
It's beautiful. It's
And
gorgeous.
so once I get them on, hopefully it'll be as nice in person. But there's the crescent moon, and I'm going to wood turn. I have a wood lathe. I'm going to turn a couple of candle cups that will get nailed down on top of here. But I'm going to space them out so that I'm going to make them interchangeable, so that you can use tea lights, charm candles, or full size tapers as you see fit. So hopefully,
While you're showing that and talking about that, and I have two other coven mates sitting like next to me, so like they can attest this too. While you're talking about this, there's like a very peculiar bird or insect or something, which it's like 40 something degrees where we are right now. But there's like something that's trying to get our attention.
Out the window.
Right.
They're like,
Right.
come to the woods. We got tea.
Literally
We got
that.
a lot.
Literally that. No, I'm excited. And like, the stang is often, from what I've seen, pretty traditionally like forked. But because the horned moon is so important in our tradition, I thought it would be kind of cool to kind of have that nod to our tradition while commissioning a traditional tool and kind of blend some SCC and traditional witchcraft by having the stang be a horned moon as opposed to just a simple fork. And I'm really excited about like being able to actually, so that middle piece then that's like a spike is where I could put the candle on.
yeah, this is going to get cut down to the minimum length it needs to be to allow me to rivet this on there and still have room to protrude up enough into a candle cup, which I'm going to turn on a wood lathe. So it'll be a wooden candle cup that'll be attached right here. It'll be sized so that you'll be able to change 2 or 3 of them out, whether you want a tea light for something short, a charm candle for something medium, or a full size taper.
Yeah, I was definitely, when I was like envisioning it, as we kind of, do, I was thinking more like a taper candle or even a chime maybe, but like preferably probably like a full size taper is kind of what I was thinking would be gorgeous to actually put in between the crescent. And then I think like when we're actually laying the compass, I think going up to the stang, this personification implement tool of the devil incarnate into our ritual, I think actually going up and lighting the witch fire will be almost like a ritual all in of itself,
So just don't bother with the tea lights then. Okay, I can skip those.
If that makes it easier.
Well, it's not difficult to turn a tea light. It's not difficult to turn the candle cup holder. This was that's
It looks
heavier
like a
gauge steel.
weapon, which is one of the other reasons I'm so in love with it.
What's that?
It looks like a weapon. Like I feel like I could do some damage with that. Like someone comes up and sneaks into our Sabbath and just with the stang.
Yeah, you won't really. This thing weighs a ton. It weighs about as much as a baseball bat. You're not going to have a difficult time defending yourself with it.
Allegedly, for entertainment purposes only.
Right.
I would never actually cause physical harm to
No.
another individual. Allegedly.
No. It's not designed as a weapon at all. But yeah, it does. I mean, it kind of has. It sort of has throwbacks to, like, say, a trident or a bident, doesn't it? So the stang does in general.
Does it, Australia? Australia, I feel like would probably know a little bit more of like the roots of it maybe than
I don't think it was ever actually intended that way. It just kind of has a resemblance.
What was the question? Sorry, I was responding to Conjure Cutie in the comment section saying that Azazel can do her doggy style. What was the question? I'm sorry.
The stang reminds me of like a trident or a bident, but I don't think it was ever actually intended as a weapon.
No. So the stang is definitely a symbol of the witch father. which is apt for this episode. The V, or the forks of the top of the stang, are meant for a couple different things. One, it represents the horns of the witch's god or the witch's devil. Two, the prongs or the tines or whatever you want to call them were used to usually pick up something like a cauldron or something like that, so that it could hang between the horns and then light could be put between them. Like Crafton said in the comments section somewhere along here, lighting the flame betwixt the horns. That's exactly what that area is for. And then usually the bottom of the stang had an iron nail driven into the bottom of it, head first up into the stang, so that the pointy end was pointing out. And that was used to carve the circle.
Oh.
So you would draw the circle with the stang. The stang would go in the middle of the circle, representing the tree that extends through all the worlds. And then you light you have the light betwixt the horns. So it's all of that. It's a very important ritual tool within certain aspects of tradcraft.
Okay, cool.
And speaking on the light betwixt the horns, I have to brag on my craft daughter for a minute here, because they made this gorgeous print, which, just so everyone knows, I do plan on doing my best to bully them into setting up an online shop where you can buy their prints, because they're a very talented artist and tens across the board. But check out this print, speaking of the light betwixt the horns. So I actually have two of these now. Like, I have one that is like in my BOS, but this one is on like a little bit sturdier of paper, and I kind of want to like go thrifting and get like a vintage circular mirror to like put this in, because in my entryway in my house I have like a lot of occult art like as soon as you walk in. So I'm either thinking of putting this in my like occult art gallery, or I might put it like on the wall to where when you walk in, like you just see the witch daddy when you walk in. I don't know. But yeah, this is that. Shout out to Craft and Magic.
That belongs in a frame on somebody's wall for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone harass Crafton into making an Etsy page and selling her art, because her art is manja. Beautiful.
I want to answer this question as well. So someone said, would the witch's devil be a kind of egregore?
That is a very
how would you define egregore?
Right.
So
that's
egregore is usually a creation or a spirit that is created from a collective. So I don't think that. See, the thing is yes, it could be considered an egregore, but it is also a very prolific spirit within mythology and the occult. So can it be considered an egregore from a personal standpoint, or from like maybe a coven standpoint? Sure. But it does have mythology backing it. So kind of yes, kind of no is my answer.
Yeah, it's like a leveled up thought form. Like it's I think it's a little bit more than that, in that.
Yeah, I could see it as, I can see what she's saying in the terms of like an egregore. Like, I feel like the witch's devil is like so tied to the craft that I don't necessarily think like other egregores it necessarily needs or demands witches to feed it energy, because the devil's been here long before we were, in my opinion, and will continue to be here after us. If we look at like the pre-Abrahamic aspect of the witch's devil, we're basically looking at the green man, or the spirit of nature itself. So I would say no, it's not an egregore, in the sense that we did not create it and it does not need us to survive. Unlike maybe a coven has a collective egregore that is built by the people initiated into that group, and it does need those members to be consistently feeding it, working with it, in order for it to survive. But I could see it being an egregore in the sense that, like, I feel like witches, in one way or another, and only in the past, I would say 2 years, has it kind of come to be in my conscious mind that this is the reality for me. But I feel like witches are inherently kind of tied and connected, because the witch's devil is a symbol of magic itself, even like the spirit of the craft personified through the witch's devil. Like the flames betwixt the horns literally is magic.
Yeah.
I wonder if the egregore is the way that the individual witch conceptualizes it.
That's actually something I was going to comment on, is that spirits and gods, like if you talk to any group of people, like if you line a group of people up and all of them say they work with the same deity, all of those people are probably going to give you similar but different ideas of how that deity presents itself to them. So maybe instead of me saying yes and no, I would say it's probably more no, it's not an egregore, and more that it's based on the perception through which a person connects with the witch's devil. Because egregores are definitely a created thing that it's a created spirit that is fed by the group that creates it. And like Jasmyne said, and I completely agree with everything Jasmyne said, you know, the witch's devil doesn't need us to feed it. It's been here a long, long time. Like there are whole landmarks in the United States and in the UK that are named for the witch's devil. Not far from here, where Keldon lives, there's a place called, isn't it called the Devil's Punch Bowl? So, I mean, like, and then in the town that I grew up, we have a place called the Devil's Hill.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was reading Jake Richards' book, Backwoods Witchcraft, about Appalachian magic, like it's interesting how many Devil's Punch Bowls or how many Devil's Cradles there are, because I don't know if Keldon is by a Devil's Cradle or a Devil's Punch Bowl or a Devil's Hole. There's all types of places, even just in the US, where there's not just one cradle. Like the devil has many holes. But I like what Crafton said here too, because this is very much also how I personally work with divinity. Going back, Blood, to talking about TST and kind of viewing the witch devil or the devil or Satan as like this archetype, and like working with kind of the archetype more so than working with it like literally. Crafton says, honestly, the witch's devil has many faces, just like the witch mother. I very much think through my work, being a devotee of the Dark Mother, I like she is the cosmic current that I feel attuned to in my practice. But like that might look like working with Lilith or working with Hecate, because the witch mother, the Dark Mother specifically, because there's the witch mother being multifaceted, her Dark Mother aspect specifically showing its face as Hecate or Lilith when that time is needed. I think that like multiple different like groups of people throughout history, based on their geographic landscape, their language, their culture, has, in my opinion, kind of personified, whether it be the devil or the Dark Mother, through like their own personifications that are definitely separate. Like I'm not trying to say I believe that like the Morrigan and Hecate are the same thing. I definitely think that they're separate, but I'm saying I think that they're related to a bigger form. Like that's how I would kind of explain that. We have this other question too. Good to see you here, Mikey. Mikey says, like, is Baphomet an egregore? Yes or no? Kind of, because I don't know of any Baphomet mythology outside of maybe the trials of the Templars, but even then that's shaky. So I'll let Astradia definitely take that. From what I know, Baphomet has been more of like a symbol of occultism that some modern practitioners choose to work with in a similar way they would work with spirits or deities. But Baphomet themselves was a very queer, androgynous symbol of magic and the occult, and like basically the primordial sort of binaries of like life and death and above and below and all of that, man and beast.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And I guess we could posit that all of these things could have been egregores at one point in time that just grew. But if we're looking at occultism from an anthropological, historical kind of sense, Baphomet was never necessarily meant to be anthropomorphized into like a singular form, because Baphomet represents polarities and balance. Baphomet, like Jasmyne was talking about, Baphomet is the as above, so below, the Solvea coagula. the light and the dark, the juxtapositions of good and evil, if those are concepts that you believe in, man and beast. Baphomet is about duality, ultimately. And Baphomet is the physical representation of both sides of the coin being shown full frontal, basically. So while we could potentially look at Baphomet as an egregore, again, I think that comes down to how you, as a witch or as a practitioner of the occult, whatever you choose to call yourself, perceives Baphomet. So for me, Baphomet is a personification of duality. Baphomet is the divine androgen, where we have like the current that is the dark mother, or the current that is the witch father, and things like that. And these currents can represent multiple faces. Baphomet is the culmination of these things in full duality, balance, polarity, opposites, similarities, all of that. Baphomet is the divine androgen, the combination of all these things, to me.
Yeah, and like in Thelema, we literally have the new Aeon through the Baphomet child. Like the priest and priestess literally embody these aspects of divinity to create the Baphomet child. And I think that's a really pretty way of saying that. Like the witch mother and witch father kind of fuse together like Transformers or something. Power Ring, I don't know, girl. But they come together, girl, to make the Baphomet child.
Mm-hmm.
A Voltron god. All right.
Yeah, Baphomet very
Am I
much.
showing my age?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Baphomet to me is definitely the divine culmination of all of those divine polarities of masculine and feminine, and dawn and dusk, and all of those things.
And in what Crafton is saying here, like there is some Islamic tea with the first and last prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad, and the connection with Baphomet, though it's like controversial, you know what I mean? I don't want the halal police after me here on the YouTube because they've definitely been kind of wilding out before when I've made some secure content. But yeah, I think that the connection with Muhammad also might stem from some Islamophobia as well. And like seeing the practices of the East as like barbaric, and associating that like barbarism with like the class of like these Europeans and like this big opposite there. I'm definitely no expert with that either, so please do your own research. But there is like a prophet connection from the Quran with Baphomet as well. So, like, I'm aware of that like concept. But yeah, so if you guys have any questions about the witch devil, please comment down below. We're gonna keep the stream tonight to like about an hour or so. Bad Cat says the equalization of androgy. I'm a tough man. The urge for an opposite may be a petite, gentle female. There are aspects within us that we all project onto our potential romantic partner. Sure. I know that in like some Thelema traditions, like there's this belief that like, a very feminine person should be pacting with and working with very masculine or Mars like centered spirits or deities, and vice versa. If you're a very like masculine person, you should be pacting with and working with the archetype of goddess and more Venusian sort of spirits and deities. Maybe that's powerful and true for you. That's not the case for me personally. But I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with working with polarity in that way.
No, I think. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. I think that could work for a lot of people. Me, like, I'm straight ace, so that's not really how I do things. As far as like romantic partner, it's based on the individual in question at the time. So I don't really feel like I'm pulled towards any particular polarity or opposite. Like, but I'm not knocking it. No, that was my comment, my 2 cents on it.
Similarly, I'm not necessarily drawn to opposing it's not that I'm not drawn to opposing polarities. I absolutely am. I mean, if we're talking about in a romantic sense, then yeah, I'm absolutely far more interested in someone who is on the more masculine side of the spectrum than myself. But spiritually speaking, I'm kind of a come one, come all kind of deal. Like I work very heavily with the divine feminine. I work very heavy with lunar energies. I work very heavily with, similar to Jasmyne um and some of the things that she said, I work very heavily with the concept of the Dark Mother. And when I do work with the divine masculine, it doesn't tend to be that same like very Martian energy. It's more like soft masculine, you know?
Yeah, spiritually, I'm a polytheist, but I tend, well, it's like there's no fire in my chart. There's an awful lot of fire in my craft. So, like, okay, actually, I can see it. Like, I'm not flipping around completely, but I'm, I can see where they're coming from like the spirituality aspect. Yeah, there. If you look at my natal chart, there's no fire at all anywhere. So, like, okay, going with that, maybe that's why I'm drawn to Smithcraft. Who knows? I don't actually. Y'all two could answer that better than I could because I don't know very much at all.
It's funny to me that you say that because, like, I have some fire placements if we're looking at more like ulterior placements. But if we're looking at like inner planets, even outer planets, the social planets, I think a lot of people are very surprised when I tell them I actually don't have any fire. Like, I think people are like, "Girl, what?" And I think that that's probably why we are kind of drawn to that element is because in modern astrology, there's this belief that there's like sort of balanced charts and unbalanced charts, aligned charts and unaligned charts. A balanced chart would be an individual who has all four elements to a degree within like their top 9, basically. So like sun, moon, rising, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Like all of those basically having earth, air, fire, water. If you don't have all four, then you're considered like unbalanced, which doesn't necessarily mean that you're batshit crazy, though in my case it does. No, I'm kidding.
Well,
but it means that you seek that. So
double Scorpio, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and so I think too that like I don't know. I'm going to be doing an episode hopefully soon with Ivy the occultist talking about vampirism. And I think that because I actually don't have fire in the core of my chart is why I seek the fire outside of myself. She can't create her own warmth. No, I'm kidding. I was actually burning up before we started the stream. But yeah, so I did want to touch on too. I think one of the big things about the witch devil, and Crafton and I were just kind of talking about this a minute ago, and we talked about this last night. But one of the things I feel like about ritual, especially for people outside of our community, right? Like I had a conversation with Inferni about this. The power of ritual, you can't really fully break the fourth power. The fourth power being kind of like to keep silent, where people initiated into a tradition are not supposed to speak of what goes on within their four walls. However, even if I tried to break things down exactly and give you a play-by-play of what my experience has been like with the devil or what my ritualistic experience has been like as a witch, some of that it has to be literally experienced. Like it's a mystery in of itself. And so there's no way to like academically even expose the inner mysteries, and there's no fear of breaking that fourth power because some things literally cannot be put into words and just have to be experienced. And I think that's a huge part, in my opinion, of like working with the devil is you just have to, like, you kind of don't understand it fully until you start working with it, and then like it starts working with you.
Yeah, you know exactly what you mean. Because to that same note, if I can be a little bit controversial for a minute, I see Bridget as a dark goddess because of my work with her in the Forge, and her, at least in my experience, her emphasis on shadow work and doing the things that we don't really wanna, but they're kind of critical to being a healthy, balanced person and being able to work in the craft. So there's a lot of people that would freak out at me for saying that, but that's how I see it. I work with Bridget Smith specifically, though. So that's just.
I think that's completely valid. And I think people tend to forget, especially in the witchcraft community, that light and dark as a concept is kind of passe. Like everything has duality. So Bridget absolutely has what might be considered a darker side. Actually, because of Crafton, I've started using, instead of light and dark, I've been saying dawn and dusk. And so I would absolutely believe that Bridget has a more dusk quality or a more night-sided quality that some might consider dark. I think all deities would have that. I think a lot of people who get combative about that lack a certain level of depth in their research on deity and stuff like that. That's just my opinion.
I would agree with you. I mean, they want to hold her up as this goddess that brings light into the darkness. Yeah, and sometimes she does it with a candle, and sometimes she does it with a flamethrower. It depends on how badly you've pissed her off.
There's people that get really upset when people associate Hecate as a dark goddess because she is this like light in the darkness, this pathfinding goddess. I mean, at the end of the day, people are going to be mad. Like, This is religion. This is like, at the end of the day, y'all, this is our religion. This is one of those topics they specifically tell you, do not talk about with strangers. We are up here on a live stream talking about our deeply held religious beliefs and sharing it with you guys. So some people are going to feel some type of way. Bridget, like, aside from some of the Egyptian pantheon, like Bridget is one of the first, I would say, like European goddesses that really kind of like made herself known in my practice. I have this really pretty statue of her over here actually on my desk table. She's not necessarily a goddess that I work with regularly or personally now, like, but I definitely feel like her shepherding me into the craft in a way led me to where I am now. And it was from Bridget that then I went to like the Morrigan, and then it was from the Morrigan that led me further into what I consider the Dark Goddess current. And I don't think it's really up to me or anyone else to tell you whether or not Bridget can be a light or dark goddess or whatever. And just to make it clear too, when I'm using the terminology like dark goddess, I'm not using it like black and white per se. I'm mentioning it more from like a planetary perspective of we have like the full moon and then we have like the dark moon. And like in BTW or like Wicca, like the maiden mother crone is this like huge trinity. But I feel like something that is left out is like the fourth aspect to that, which would be the opposite of the full moon, which would be the dark moon. So like, while I think the MMC is beautiful and like has its own role in magic, I think that the dark moon phase is where the dark mother current, from a cosmological standpoint, comes from.
Was it left out or was it always there, but you can't see it because it's the dark moon? Though?
Or people tried to pull it out.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And that's funny you mentioned that because Bridget, like the first time I approached the Morrigan told me to fuck off. So, yeah, and I ended up getting found by Bridget. Finding, I'm not entirely sure who found who, but yeah, and I agree with you. I agree with you. I'm curious about Astradia. Like, if it's all right with me if it's all right to ask, like you mentioned Tubal Cain, I'm a little curious about how you view Tubal Cain, your connection or relationship, if it's okay to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to be part of the Coven. The Coven is no longer. But one of the primary current that we worked through was Cochrane, traditional witchcraft, Robert Cochrane, the way that he perceived witchcraft, and Tubal Cain is a big aspect of that. So within this tradition, like some of the major symbols, like Tubal Cain was one of the primary masculine deific focuses of this particular tradition. The symbol that we utilized for Tubal Cain was the anvil, because that is one of his symbols. And the idea there is that Tubal Cain is, as the witch father, works the forge, and the fire burning about the forge is the witch fire. And what he is forging at this forge is the magic of every witch. So as he stands there and he's hammering away at his forge, what he's doing is he is tempering our magic. And it's also symbolic of the cycles of life and death, with the fires of creation and the quench tank of death. Water in most things is considered to be the symbol or the portal to the underworld. And so for that cycle of life and death, you have the fires of Tubal Cain's creation and the quench tank to extinguish life. So yeah, that's really been that's kind of where it was for me. I have no personal experience with smithing. I've known a few smiths, now you included, and I deeply admire the work and dedication that goes into that. And I completely agree with what you said back at the beginning of the stream about the intrinsic intertwining of the work of a blacksmith and witchcraft. I agree with that completely. In magic.
Thank you. So it's funny, from your description, yeah, I would have thought that you were a smith. You have a very good understanding of, at least energetically or magically, the process. Yeah, it heats up in the forge, and yes, actually, the water, at least in the Celtic circles, is very much a symbol of passing on through the veil. So, and I tend to work with reclaimed steel. So, life, death, life again is very much a part of my practice. So you basically just described my process in a nutshell.
That's awesome.
I thought it was really cool. I was like, dude,
I am a smith of words. I don't necessarily know I am quite the forger of steel or anything like that, but I'm definitely a wordsmith.
I'll make you blacksmith out of you yet. Just come by New Jersey. I'll make a blacksmith out of you yet.
I was going to say yet. I feel like it's going to be 6 months from now, and you're going to be like having a whole mercurial moment, and you're going to be like, so I have a forge now. And I'm going to be like, what?
She needs one. You already have the concept of it.
You know, it's funny. I've watched quite a lot of like backyard blacksmithing videos, so who knows?
Speaking of blacksmithing and stuff, so I am right now taking this course, and in part of the coursework, I'm technically supposed to have an anvil and use the anvil in ritual. I still do not have an anvil. I know I was supposed to order it. I didn't order it, but I've been just using this rock. Because, you know, witches, we adapt what we have, we use what we have. So I've been using the rock in place of it, but I need to get an anvil, but I want her to be cute. I'm not trying to carry around this heavy ass anvil into the woods for our rituals. I'm really not. So I need something like, I don't know. I can't be carrying around this heavy anvil.
Get a small chunk of railroad track.
Okay.
So, funny you should say rock. What do you think the first blacksmith that forged something used? A fucking rock. He didn't have an anvil. Nobody built them yet. He would have used a very hard rock. Or a stump. I've done it. I've forged on a stump. It doesn't work as well.
On a tree stump?
Yes.
I will say you can get really tiny, like cast iron anvils on Amazon for like $20.
The first
well, like I kind of like the idea. Go ahead, Blood.
One of the first anvils that they would have used, because iron was so valuable and so expensive, would have been roughly the size of a sledgehammer head. And that's what they would make an entire sword out of, from. Because you don't have a whole lot of that very precious resource. So you have to use what you got. The the most impressive thing about the ancient smiths was just how very much they could do with very, very, very little.
So forging like hot steel on wood like is a tea.
Yeah, it is. You get a chunk of hardwood. You can only do it once or twice, but you can do
Right.
it. And I actually have a stump. I mean, it's a log, but if I need to make something that is bold in the middle, I carve out a log till it's hollow and dished, and then I place the hot thing on top of the somewhat bowled out log, and beat it till it matches the curvature of what I've carved out. It's a cheap, kind of bullshit way of doing it, but it works. And if it works, it's not bullshit.
Well, Blood, I think you're a fan favorite, so you have to come back again.
Okay.
Contra Cutie says, I love Chris.
Oh, thank you.
So. And Crafton says, Chris's goals.
Thank you.
So.
See, now I'm inspired to start learning to be a blacksmith. So.
And I think you should do this blacksmithing in your full pastel get up too. Like, I think for the full fantasy.
You know,
I'm thinking black and pink apron.
That
Leather
sounds
apron.
great. That sounds great. I'm not quite sure how well my collection of synthetic wigs is going to do around a forge, but you know what? Maybe I'll make it a thing.
You have to have a specific forge wig, and it has to be a ritual tool that you adorn and anoint yourself with when you're about to do the work. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, you know, like out actually, they get yourself a welder's do-rag instead.
There we go. Just fully bandana myself up.
Yeah. Well, okay, you're throwing sparks and forge slag all over the place.
Yeah.
Wow, Nocturnal.
Ooh. Chris is Daddy Darkness.
You're a fan favorite. You're a fan favorite. Well, you guys, this is fun, and we'll have to do like another, whether we cover the Witch's Devil again, or maybe we do like a folklore live or something together.
We
Like,
haven't even talked about the Jersey Devil.
we haven't, yeah.
We need to do a cryptid episode.
Yeah, we do. Actually, hell, we talked about that way back in the summer, didn't we, Jasmine?
Yeah. Yeah.
We haven't done that yet. We need to do that. We all three of us need to do that.
Yeah, I'll have to definitely get Paige on the
Key on
cryptid.
the Jersey Devil. He's my next door neighbor. I live in the Jersey Pine Barrens. The only state in the union to have an official state devil. Everybody else has an official state tree, state bird, state flower. Jersey, no, we got a special state demon.
So, Chris, is this your way of telling Jasmine and I that we need to come out and visit you and do some like filmed cryptid hunting?
Yeah. I'm casting the hook out there. I'm baiting it.
We're on our way.
All right.
Just Jasmine and I in the middle of the woods in heels looking for cryptids.
Yeah, you might want to bring some boots because Jersey Pine Barrens is kind of hard to walk in. It's a little boggy, a little swampy.
Well, we'll definitely have to plan some kind of Daughters of Cain collaboration again. This is our last one for 2022. Oh my gosh.
And what an excellent guest we had for this last episode.
Yes. I hope everyone had a bright solstice if you choose to celebrate. It was really great to see all of you in the chat tonight. Thanks for coming out for the Witch's Devil. We'll definitely have Chris back on. I want to thank my co-host too. Thank you for helping make Daughters of Cain. You know, just our sweetest infernal nightmare. Really appreciate it, Miss Pastel. And yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up now that we're a little bit over the hour. So thank you all for coming. Blessed be, and I will see you in hell.
See you in hell.
Blessed be.